Okay, folks, today's video is less of an in-depth study and more of what I think about libertarianism and why I think it always fails in politics and has really no future in America, unfortunately. Do you believe that humanity and the world can be perfected? What does perfect mean to you? A world in which everyone can do as they desire? A world in which no need is left unmet? In the interest of perfection, would it require changing something so drastically about humanity that we wouldn't even be humans anymore? Is that a worthwhile goal? Or do you believe that human nature is one of flaws, something that can't be perfected? If you answered yes to is it possible to perfect humanity, then you're likely a blank slatist. You think that if you took two babies with different genes from opposite sides of the world and raised them in the exact same circumstances, that they would end up being ideological carbon copies of each other. So your goal is simple. Educate everyone, install a single world government, and work to eradicate all differences between people. Get rid of borders, get rid of, races. This is how the communists saw it. Unfortunately, studies have shown time and time again concerning genetics that we have innate personalities. There seems to be about a 50-50 split between the effect of nature or nurture when it comes to your personality. If you know this and you think that technology is the answer, you're likely a techno-communist. You think that utilizing modern and future medical technology, you can eradicate the differences between people. Is eugenics a good thing? Let me know what you think. If you've gone through these arguments before, then you've likely arrived at the conclusion that humanity is inherently flawed. This is something religious folks believe, of course, a fallen world, fallen people. The steps we would have to take to eradicate the differences between people and the flaws we have would destroy essentially what it means to be human, our drive to stand out, our creativity, and the opportunity to learn from our mistakes. So where do we go from there? This thought process usually leads to two different principle-based ideologies. If humanity is inherently flawed, we can either, one, totally control the inherently flawed, uneducated masses with top-down authoritarianism, or two, we can strive to provide absolute freedom to everyone and competing interests will balance each other out, i.e. libertarianism. I think most folks agree that total authoritarianism is, a silly concept, but some people do subscribe to it, so let's just point out the number one and obvious counter. What happens when the central authority has an opinion that you don't like? Especially considering that in order to get to this ideology, you have to believe that humanity is inherently flawed, which includes your authoritarian leader. Libertarianism, on the other hand, has been pointed to by, great leaders, people who work in politics, and so on, as the right system to adhere to. But similar to communism, libertarians use a future utopia as the thing to make progress towards, even when they say, no, I just use this ideology as a guideline. But if you cannot show when and where your perfect system has existed and worked, then you're doing the same thing that the communists do. You're saying, well, true libertarianism has never been tried. And I'm here to tell you what everyone says to the communists. Libertarianism only works on paper. One of the overlaps between communism and libertarianism is pointing to hierarchies as sort of the main problem with society. Sure, I get it. I see someone who's better than me in every way. They're, smarter, stronger, faster, richer, better with women than I am, a better leader. And I get jealous too, sure. But is my jealousy such a justifiable emotion that I should lobby my government to balance out my flaws with their merits? Or should I work on myself to better myself and achieve what I'm capable of? We know what a communist thinks, and not just young people who identify as communist but are really socialist. A communist wants to destroy hierarchy entirely. A modern socialist and a libertarian would say that, no, I don't have a problem with hierarchy per se. It's just that the difference in wealth between the average person and the top 0.1%, though that billions of dollars, there's no merit that a person has that amounts to that difference. While I agree with that sentiment, notice how they both have the same issue, yet they have different remedies for how to fix this. The problem with today's political thinkers is that they use a single principle-based ideology to apply to every situation they come across. The gender pay gap, for example, isn't due to inherent differences between the sexes and their proclivities, seeing as how everyone is a blank slate at birth. It's because society teaches men to get one over on women. And on the other hand, using tariffs to bring industry back to America is horrible to a libertarian because it goes against the free market. One of the first lessons you learn when growing up is that life is full of compromises. But somewhere along the way, you stopped allowing compromises when it concerns your ideology. What is going to get you through the day? What is going to allow the world to achieve its perfect order? Hierarchies exist. Some people are better than you or me. Are we going to allow our pride to cloud us from a good leader? The founding fathers of America were very intelligent, well-read men who spent their lives pondering on human nature. They tried to set up a system of checks and balances that it could evolve over time to weather the storm. None of these men were libertarians, and libertarians today like to tout themselves as the ones who are after the founding fathers' hearts. If you read the Federalist Papers, then you would know their thoughts on what they think a government's obligations and duties are. And no, those obligations don't boil down to protection of property rights, as most libertarians think. What happens when a business decides to cut costs by dumping their waste material into a river instead of safely disposing of it in accordance with government regulation? Do people magically just stop patronizing the place because they're decent people? How would they even know that the material is being dumped unless they go and conduct investigations? Simply put, if you remove the organization that is the government with a snap of the fingers, just magically, tomorrow humans would organize themselves into a government again. All a government is at its baseline is an organization of humans overseeing other humans. The true nature of humans include people who are detestable, who just want to get one over on another person and would extract as much wealth from another as they could. It is impossible to keep a person with an agenda out of the government. So in order to help stifle their agenda, we need to set up a system that does so. Well, what if we limit the wages of our representatives? Our representatives already don't make a ton of money. Most of the money they make is from donations from organizations with agendas. Representatives shouldn't be allowed to take donations. Okay, well, I'm not sure how you keep somebody from taking donations. There's plenty of ways to set up a business and launder money through it. As well as when our representatives leave office, they go and take positions at these companies with a high salary. No representative should be allowed to work at a company after they retire. Okay, let's say a representative worked in office for one term and left after 4 years. So they're not allowed to work anymore? The real solution is in the writings of our founding fathers. In James Madison's Federalist Paper 51, he says ambition must be made to counteract ambition. He is saying that we must use the nature of humans itself as a tool for balancing government. Any method of government works on paper if you assume everyone is a decent human being and a good faith actor. The only kind of government that actually works is one that operates based on how humans operate. That's why economics is usually a good science or philosophy for analyzing human behavior, because it analyzes what humans do, not what humans can do. That's why thinkers like Thomas Sowell and Milton Friedman seem so wise. There isn't a problem per se with the modern system of compromises, competing ambitions, and checks and balances. This is the thought process behind conservatism, that the men and women before us thought about human nature and what we are, as opposed to what we do today, which is thinking about what humans could and should be. Libertarians want legalized porn, drugs, gambling, all of the vices you can think of and list, that libertarians want it legalized. Of course, I don't think the government profiting via taxes off these vices is a way to actually stifle them. It's complicit. Most people believe that certain vices that they don't like should not be legalized or should be heavily restricted. What we should do as a society is look at studies on these vices and how they affect people and legislate accordingly. And you better believe if I was emperor of the United States, I would outlaw so many of these things immediately. No, libertarian, I don't care about your freedoms to do things, especially when those freedoms come in direct conflict with decent society. Does that sound authoritarian to you? Yeah, I know, it's because you'd rather be gooning to furry hentai than doing anything else ever. But I'm sorry, it's time to grow up and join the ranks of decent society. No, I wouldn't do those things. I just think that people should have the right to do them. And that right there is why libertarianism will always fail. Advocating for someone to do something that you find morally reprehensible. Most people have thoughts and opinions on what they think should be legalized or not, and they vote in people who agree with them. Libertarians like Ron Paul working in government only go so far when it comes to finding a middle ground between libertarianism and the modern system. You have to be pragmatic. Again, most people will vote for a representative who agrees with them, and if your thought process is that you want everything to be free and legalized, then you're not going to get a representative. What you should do, if you call yourself a libertarian, is drop the label and understand the meaning of compromise. This is what classical liberals and conservatives are. Classical liberals and conservatives used to work and compromise on a fundamentally American system, something calling to the Constitution, not some future utopian society like communism and libertarianism point to. If you want to realize your morals in society, you can't be a libertarian. You should drop the ideology and be pragmatic. Look at what works for society and what doesn't. You know how drugs affect people. People don't do heroin and come out of it better. People don't get addicted to gambling and come out of it better. Conservatives understand that if you give people the tools to do whatever they want, they will use those tools, and this will be reflected in the health of the society. So which way, Western man? Time to circle back to decent society and stop advocating for degenerates to degenerate. Thanks so much for watching the video. If you liked it, leave a like, send it to someone you know, share it with someone you don't, who gives a damn. And if you think that I provided you any value, you can leave a tip at Ko-Fi down in the description. And you guys have a great day.